Hello everybody, my name is Vlad and I'm from Russia. And the war between Russia and Ukraine has been ongoing for 1.5 years. Interestingly, Russia still has not declared war. Instead, they still refer to the conflict as a special military operation. And for those who have not thought about it or don't know the reasons, in this video I will tell you why Russia has not officially declared war on Ukraine. To begin with, let's recall how the conflict started. On February 21st in 22nd year, the Russian government recognized the independence of the Donetsk People's Republic and the Lugansk People's Republic. Agreements were subsequently signed with these unrecognized republics, including points on joint defense. The question remained, did the Russian authorities recognize the regions as de facto territories under their control, or were they referring to its borders, which were legally supposed to cover the entire Donetsk and Lugansk regions? Soon it became clear that recognized borders were based on previously documented agreements, and not just the territories under Russian control. It was evident that some form of conflict was inevitable. On February 24th, in 22nd year, Putin announced the start of a special military operation in Ukraine, citing Article 51st of the United Nations Charter, which guarantees a country's right to individual or collective defense. Therefore, Putin was effectively using this right to defend the unrecognized republics, although it did not perfectly align with the article. Other countries have occasionally referred to this article as well. The United States during its invasion to Iraq and Turkey during attacks on Syrian Kurds have cited it. However, the use of this article has faced criticism, especially when employed for aggressive actions. Modern countries refrain from officially declaring wars, as it would be seen as aggression against another nation and automatically condemned by all Union nation member states. This is precisely why countries, including Russia, resort to Article 51st of the Union Nation Charter regarding self-defense. If Russia were to declare war, it would face complete isolation from all other countries, including China and India, with whom Russia maintains active trade relations. Therefore, Russia has not declared war on Ukraine, as it's not in line with global norms, and it comes with significant responsibilities and costs. Utilizing the self-defense article is a more convenient option, as it does not receive such unequivocal condemnation from Western countries. Nonetheless, Western countries still label Russia's actions as aggression, while some other countries remain neutral. Such a neutral stance would not be possible if Russia declared war on Ukraine. It's also important to understand that during the initial stage of the war, both Russian and Western sides considered it to be a short-term operation within the territory of Ukraine. Russia even tried to convince Ukrainian military personnel to lay down their arms and not fight for Ukraine. They later suggested that it was not a fight against the whole of Ukraine, but only against nationalist battalions on its territory, creating an illusion of a limited conflict. Western countries also sent clear signals that they did not believe in Ukrainians' military victory. Their intelligence assessments indicated that Russian forces could capture Kiev within 72 or 96 hours, meaning within 3 or 4 days. Representatives from the UK and the United States offered President Zelensky to evacuate from Ukraine to escape danger in Western countries. Apparently, they believed that Zelensky could lead some kind of government in exile. Even the pre-war weapons supplies suggest that Western countries were probably preparing for a wide-scale partisan war in Ukraine, rather than direct conflict between two regular armies. This was evident in the delivery of light anti-tank and anti-aircraft installations, designed to operate from ambush positions. However, all these expectations did not materialize, and the so-called special operation turned into a prolonged that has been continued for over 1.5 years, with no clear end in sight. Despite this situation, Russian authorities still refrained from declaring war on Ukraine, influenced by several internal reasons. The first reason is a negative perception of war in Russian society. When declaring the special operation, Russian authorities were mindful of not only external factors in international law, but also their domestic audience. The legacy of the Soviet era has left a strong impression on public consciousness, with a significant portion of the population seeking to avoid war at all costs. Putin, driven by his sentiments towards the Soviet Union, endorsed this rhetoric to maintain the status quo and strengthen his authority. The Russian people are willing to endure any hardship as long as it means avoiding war. That is why the Kremlin reacted so strongly even to the mention of the word war. Immediately after the start of hostilities in Ukraine, the use of the word war was prohibited, and anyone using it could face serious penalties. Declaring war could have led to mass unrest among citizens, although it's uncertain if they would have taken to the streets in protest actively. Nevertheless, such a step would have created tension in society. The second reason is mobilization. Declaring war entails various costs, including mobilization of the population and the economy. Despite mandatory military service in Russia, less than 20% of the population from the eligible age group actually join the army. In the public consciousness, the military is associated with something negative, and a large portion of the population avoid it. Mobilization in one form or another could lead to instability in society. The law enforcement upon whom the regime relies are usually involved in patrolling the streets and dispersing protest, but not preparing to go to war in case of mobilization. If mobilization were introduced, law enforcement would face discontent and a potential decline in public support for the current regime. Mobilizing the economy is also a complex process and could cause irritation in society. Russian authorities have already initiated some economic mobilization measures, but in moderate manner. However, a wartime economy would lead to reduced spending and consumption for citizens, especially considering the imposed sanctions and import bans. This would significantly impact the population. It's essential to note that the Kremlin's main goal is to maintain status quo within Russia. The authorities fear significant changes in society that could lead to unexpected outcomes. Therefore, even now, they strive to preserve the current state of affairs and mitigate the effects of sanctions and companies leaving the country. The third reason is propaganda. On my channel, I have a video where I explained how Russian military propaganda brainwashed Russians. For a long time, Russian propaganda has portrayed Ukraine as an unworthy state, seemingly in semi-anarchy and with the weak military. In contrast, Russia is depicted as a powerful nation, with the second largest army in the world, and cutting-edge weaponry, surpassing even the Americans. This narrative strengthens patriotic sentiments in society and supports the position of the Russian authorities. Therefore, declaring war on Ukraine carries serious risk for the Russian authorities. It could lead to instability in society, mass arrests, and negative consequences for the economy and the population. Due to these factors, despite the prolonged military confrontation, Russia prefers to avoid a formal declaration of war, restoring instead to a special operation and relying on the right to self-defense under Article 51, aiming to minimize negative consequences within the country. Furthermore, Russian propaganda itself claimed that Russia was preparing for war against the entire NATO bloc and did not view Ukraine as a serious adversary. However, the beginning of the special operation demonstrated that things were not as straightforward. As a result, declaring war and mobilizing society could have shattered the Kremlin's narrative of a weak Ukraine and a strong Russia. This would have raised legitimate questions in society about the whereabouts of the Second World Army, although such questions already arise among even pro-Putin citizens. In the current situation, Russian propaganda is attempting to maintain and work on the established agenda, stating that everything is going according to plan and not disrupting the familiar way of life for majority of Russians. Interestingly, Russia already has a formal pretext for declaring war on Ukraine. While there was no real reasons on February 24th, during the course of the military campaign such a pretext emerged: the shelling of adjacent Russian territories by the Ukrainian side. However, the Kremlin seems unwilling to take this step. Moreover, some attacks are attributed either to technical malfunctions or accidents to prevent further escalation and maintain the appearance of stability in Russia. Regarding why Ukraine does not declare war on Russia, the answer is simple. Russia is a nuclear state with significant potential, which is why Ukraine is hesitant to take such a step. Even from a legal perspective, declaring war would not change anything, as any attack on a country, regardless of formal declaration, is considered aggression according to Union Nation Resolution 1974. Therefore, from an international law perspective, declaring war would not make a difference. In conclusion, Russia does not declare war on Ukraine because it would incur additional costs and create both international and internal tensions. The majority of Russians fear war and changes to the status quo.